Bundy, Dahmer, Ramirez, names that haunt headlines and history. But for every monster who lived long enough to stand trial, there were others whose stories ended behind bars, in silence, or by their own hand. 6 killers, 6 endings, each one different. None escaped the same fate. What you're about to hear isn't about their crimes. It's about how the story finally stopped. Jack Unterweger was born in Judenburg, Austria in 1950. His childhood was unstable. When his mother, a sex worker, was imprisoned, he was raised mostly by relatives. As a young man, Unterweger drifted between small jobs and petty crime before escalating to violence. In 1974, he strangled an 18-year-old woman and was sentenced to life in prison. What happened next turned him into a national fascination. During his sentence, Unterweger wrote fiction and poetry that gained major literary attention. Politicians and writers argued he was rehabilitated, a model case of transformation through art. After 15 years, he was paroled in 1990. Almost immediately, women began disappearing across Austria. Many were sex workers, each killed with a distinctive ligature-style knot, the same knot Unterweger had once written about. He traveled frequently through Germany, Czechoslovakia, and the United States, presenting himself as a crime journalist. In Los Angeles, 3 more women were found dead using the same method. As investigators compared evidence, Austria issued a warrant for his arrest. Unterweger fled the country, but U.S. Marshals tracked him to Miami and took him into custody. He was extradited back to Austria to stand trial. The courtroom became a spectacle. Unterweger arrived in a white suit, calm and composed, still performing for cameras. The evidence, fibers, phone records, and witness testimony formed a clear pattern. On June 29, 1994, he was convicted of 9 murders. That night, guards found him dead in his cell, hanged, with shoelaces and a tracksuit cord tied in the same knot he used on his victims. He had been sentenced only hours earlier. Some killers choose their endings. Others script them long before the verdict. The next man lived by control and died the same way. Israel Keyes was born in Utah in 1978 and raised in rural Washington state. His family lived off the grid, avoiding modern systems and outside contact. As a teenager, Keyes developed an interest in stalking animals and later admitted he knew even then he wanted to kill people. He joined the U.S. Army in 1998, serving until 2001. After his discharge, he worked construction jobs, ran a handyman business, and blended perfectly into everyday life. Behind that facade, he was planning murders across the country. Between 2001 and 2012, Keyes operated with meticulous discipline. He buried kill kits, buckets filled with weapons, duct tape, and cash in states he had no connection to, returning months or years later to use them. His goal was simple: no pattern, no victim link, no forensic trail. In 2012, he abducted 18-year-old Samantha Koenig from a coffee stand in Anchorage, Alaska. Her disappearance was caught on security cameras. Her debit card withdrawals were tracked across multiple states, leading authorities to Keyes in Texas during a routine traffic stop. During interviews, Keyes admitted to multiple murders but refused to give names or locations. He controlled conversations, paused them, redirected them, as if the interrogation was his stage. He once said, "I'll tell you everything when I'm ready." He never was. On December 2, 2012, Keyes was found dead in his cell at the Anchorage Correctional Complex. He had cut his wrists and neck with a razor blade and strangled himself with a bedsheet. He left behind a 4-page note filled with cryptic lines about death and violence. Authorities ruled the death a suicide. Afterward, the FBI linked him to at least 11 possible victims. Keyes planned every detail of his life and his exit. But not every killer gets to decide how their story ends. Some lose control the moment someone else steps into the room. Robert Pickton was born in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, in 1949. He grew up on his family's pig farm, a property that later became infamous. After their parents died, Pickton and his siblings ran the farm, turning it into a mix of pig pens, scrap piles, and late-night party spaces. People came and went constantly. By the mid-1990s, women from Vancouver's downtown east side began disappearing. Families filed reports. Many were dismissed as transient movement. For years, the pattern went unnoticed. That changed in 2002. Officers executed a search warrant for illegal firearms at Picton's farm and found something else instead: personal items belonging to missing women and DNA linking Picton to multiple victims. He was arrested and charged with 26 counts of murder. Picton was eventually convicted on 6 and sentenced to life without parole for 25 years, Canada's maximum penalty at the time. He served his sentence at the Port Cartier Institution in Quebec. Inmates described him as quiet and isolated, occasionally boasting about his notoriety. On May 19, 2024, Picton was attacked by another inmate using a broken broom handle. He was airlifted to a hospital where he died on May 31st. Authorities ruled the death a homicide. The Correctional Service of Canada released a brief statement offering condolences to the families of his victims. No further details were released due to privacy laws. For some, Picton's death brought long-delayed closure. For others, it was a reminder that justice doesn't always come through the courts. The next case proves that even infamy can fade, and sometimes it fades quietly. Ricardo Leyva Munoz Ramirez was born in El Paso, Texas, in 1960. His childhood was marked by instability, an abusive father, chronic violence at home, and early exposure to crime. As a teenager, Ramirez drifted into theft, drug use, and breaking into homes. He moved to California in the early 1980s, where everything escalated. Between 1984 and 1985, Ramirez committed a series of home invasions, assaults, and murders that terrorized Los Angeles and San Francisco. His attacks were random. Victims of all ages. No pattern, no predictable method. The symbols he left behind, including pentagrams, led the press to call him the Night Stalker. On August 31, 1985, he was recognized on a street after his photograph ran in the morning newspaper. A crowd pursued him, cornered him, and held him until police arrived. He was charged with 13 murders, multiple attempted murders, and dozens of related crimes. His trial began in 1988 and became one of the most publicized in California history. Ramirez was defiant, flashing hand-drawn pentagrams, making statements about Satan, and treating a courtroom like a stage. But the evidence was overwhelming. Fingerprints, ballistic matches, and eyewitness testimony secured his conviction in 1989. He was sentenced to death in California's gas chamber, but he never made it there. All death sentences in California trigger automatic appeals, and Ramirez's defense filed motion after motion, challenging procedures, evidence, and jury selection. Those appeals kept him on death row at San Quentin for more than 20 years. By the time the courts were nearing resolution, Ramirez's health was failing. In early 2013, he was hospitalized with complications from B-cell lymphoma and liver failure. He died on June 7th at the age of 53. Ramirez once said that evil would live forever. In the end, illness and bureaucracy outlasted him. Some killers die quietly, almost forgotten. The next one met a fate he spent a decade trying to avoid, and the world watched it happen. Theodore Robert Bundy was born in Burlington, Vermont in 1946 and raised primarily in Washington state. He appeared clean-cut, articulate, and intelligent, studying psychology, working on political campaigns, even volunteering at a crisis hotline. Behind the facade, Bundy was leading a double life. Between 1974 and 1978, he abducted and murdered young women across several states. He used fake injuries, impersonated authority figures, and exploited trust to lure victims. His crimes stretched across Washington, Oregon, Utah, Colorado, and finally Florida. In 1975, Bundy was stopped for a traffic violation in Utah. Inside his car, police found burglary tools and suspicious items that tied him to multiple disappearances. He escaped custody twice, once from a courthouse window in Colorado and later from a county jail. In January 1978, while on the run, Bundy attacked the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. He killed 2 women and assaulted others. Days later, he abducted and murdered 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. He was arrested again after a routine traffic stop in Pensacola. Bundy insisted on representing himself, turning both trials into media events. He smiled for cameras, lectured the court, and cross-examined witnesses as though he were performing. In 1979, he was convicted of the Chi Omega murders and sentenced to death. A second conviction for Kimberly Leach brought another death sentence the following year. Bundy spent 9 years filing appeals, studying his own case, and giving interviews to psychologists. By January 1989, his appeals had been exhausted. Bundy was moved to the execution chamber at Florida State Prison. Witnesses described him as quiet, pale, and resigned. At 7:16 a.m. on January 24, 1989, the electric chair, known as Old Sparky, was activated. He was pronounced dead minutes later. Outside, crowds gathered with signs and t-shirts reading, "Burn, Bundy, burn." Television cameras captured the scene as smoke rose from the prison's exhaust vent. Bundy once called himself the most cold-hearted son of a you'll ever meet. When the current stopped, the performance stopped with it. Some killers fight the state until the very end. The next one never made it that far. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 1960. He grew up quiet and withdrawn, developing an early fascination with anatomy and decay. By high school, he was drinking heavily and living in deep isolation. Between 1978 and 1991, Dahmer murdered 17 men and boys, most in his Milwaukee apartment. He met victims at bars, bus stops, and shopping malls, offering money or companionship before attacking them. On July 22, 1991, one intended victim escaped and flagged down police. Officers followed him back to Dahmer's apartment. Inside, they found extensive evidence of mutilation and attempts to preserve human remains. The discovery shocked the nation and raised questions about how Dahmer had avoided arrest for so long. Dahmer confessed immediately, speaking calmly and in detail. He was charged with 15 murders in Wisconsin and later admitted to 2 more in Ohio. At trial in 1992, he pleaded guilty but insane. The jury rejected the claim and found him fully responsible. He received 15 consecutive life sentences. Dahmer was sent to the Columbia Correctional Institution in Wisconsin, where he maintained a low profile, reading the Bible, attending chapel, and occasionally joking about his notoriety. Other inmates viewed him with a mix of disgust and fascination. On November 28, 1994, Dahmer was assigned routine cleaning duties with 2 other inmates, Jesse Anderson and Christopher Scarver. Around 8:10 a.m., a corrections officer found all 3 injured on the floor. Dahmer had been beaten with a metal bar taken from exercise equipment. He was transported to a hospital and pronounced dead an hour later. Anderson died 2 days later from similar injuries. Scarver later said he acted on what he described as divine inspiration. Dahmer once told detectives he killed to feel complete. In the end, another inmate decided the story was complete enough. 6 men, 6 endings written in concrete, steel, and silence. Unterweger wanted art. He got irony. Keyes wanted control. He lost it. Picton wanted anonymity. He got none. Ramirez wanted immortality. He got bureaucracy. Bundy wanted attention. He got an audience he didn't choose. Dahmer wanted understanding. He got consequence. In the end, every monster meets their end. Some by the courts, some by their own hand, some by people who couldn't wait for justice. If you want more, join us for the next one, where we uncover the killers who were never caught.